The Mercury Grand Marquis is a full-size rear-wheel drive luxury sedan that was sold by Mercury from 1975 to 2011. From 1975 to 1982, it was the premium model of the Mercury Marquis model line and became a standalone model in 1983. For its entire production run, the Grand Marquis served as the flagship of the Mercury line. It was the Mercury counterpart of the Ford Crown Victoria. From 1979 to 2011, it shared the Panther platform along with the Lincoln Town Car. From 1979 to 1985, the Grand Marquis was manufactured at the St. Louis assembly plant in Hazelwood, Missouri. From 1986 to 2011, production was located at the St. Thomas assembly plant in Southwold, Ontario, Canada. With the phasing out of the Mercury brand following the 2010 model year, a limited run of 2011 models were produced. The last Grand Marquis rolled off the assembly line on January 4, 2011. It was the final Mercury vehicle produced. 1975 Euro 1978. In 1967, the Marquis nameplate made its first appearance as a two-door hardtop version of the Mercury Monterey. Largely the Mercury equivalent of the Ford Limited, the Marquis would serve the replacement for the Park Lane and Montclair as the Monterey became the entry model of the full-size Mercury line in 1969. In 1969, the Marquis would take over the Brougham trim package from the Park Lane. In 1975, Mercury introduced the Grand Marquis as a higher trim submodel of the Marquis. Along with bridging the gap between the Mercury Marquis and the Lincoln Continental, the Grand Marquis allowed Mercury to more directly compete against the Buick Electra 225, Oldsmobile 98, and the Chrysler New Yorker. In 1979, as the Marquis was redesigned and downsized, the Grand Marquis made its return as the top trim of the full-size Mercury line. Its Ford counterpart was the newly introduced Ford Limited Crown Victoria. First generation, the Grand Marquis was introduced as a model in its own right in 1983, as Ford Motor Company split up its full-size and mid-size model lines for both Ford and Lincoln Mercury. For Mercury, the Marquis nameplate became its entry on the mid-size Fox platform, replacing the sedan and wagon versions of the Cougar. The similar Zephyr was replaced by the all-new front-wheel drive Topaz. Remaining the flagship sedan of the Mercury lineup, the Grand Marquis now was left as the sole full-size sedan of the division. Based upon the Panther platform, the Grand Marquis was the counterpart of the Ford Limited Crown Victoria, and the Lincoln Continental Mark VI. As with its Ford counterpart, a padded vinyl half-roof was standard equipment. While the Limited Crown Victoria was distinguished by a crowning metal band surrounding the B-pillars, which was first introduced in 1955 on the Crown Victoria, the Grand Marquis had opera lamps similar to the Lincoln Town Car. Higher trim versions also had the option of a Frenched rear window. The Grand Marquis was available in two-door sedan and four-door sedan body styles in standard and LS trim. As part of the model shift, the Colony Park station wagon became part of the Grand Marquis line. A non-wood grain Grand Marquis was available as well. Most versions of the Colony Park would wear Grand Marquis LS badging and trim. Year-by-year changes Powertrain The 5.0L 5.0 Windsor V8 was the sole engine available from model years 1983 Euro 1985. In 1986, the engine was converted from throttle body to sequential multi-port fuel injection. These engines are easily distinguished by their cast aluminum upper intake manifolds with horizontal throttle body. This replaced the traditional throttle body with a carburetor-style top-mounted air cleaner previously used. Additionally, in 1986, the 5.8L Windsor V8 was returned to the Grand Marquis Colony Park engine lineup. By the end of production in 1991, versions ordered with the 5.8L would be the final carbureted vehicles ever sold in North America by Ford. Both engines were coupled to the 4-speed AOD overdrive automatic transmission. Livery use Limousine manufacturers used the Mercury Grand Marquis as a cheaper alternative to the mechanically similar Lincoln Town Car. These were more popular in Latin America than in the United States. In the 1989 James Bond movie License to Kill, the villain Franz Sanchez drives a black 1985 Grand Marquis limousine. This limousine was black with a red interior. Second generation, for the 1992 model year, both Ford and Mercury Panther platform cars underwent their most extensive changes since their 1979 introduction. While the chassis was retained, the body was all new from the ground up. After 13 years on the market, the full-size sedans from Mercury and Ford were struggling against far more modern competition. Additionally, as unintentional consequence of over 30 years of badge engineering, the Grand Marquis and its limited Crown Victoria counterpart were left as virtual identical twins. In a significant break from precedent, the Grand Marquis and Ford Crown Victoria were allowed completely different bodies. The only visually shared body parts were the front doors and the windshield. In line with the rest of Ford Motor Company vehicles sold in North America, aerodynamics and fuel economy played a large role in the design of the new Grand Marquis. Unlike the Crown Victoria, which followed the design themes of the Ford Taurus, the Grand Marquis would combine contemporary design with traditional styling features seen in full-size sedans such as full-width taillights, a formal roofline, and a chrome waterfall grille. In various forms, the latter would become a signature styling feature across the Mercury product line from the late 1990s onward. As part of the redesign, Ford sought a new type of buyer for its full-size Mercury sedan. Instead of the older buyers who traditionally bought them, the 1992 Grand Marquis was marketed to younger buyers in need of a larger car than a Ford Taurus Mercury Sable. As such, the opera lamps and padded vinyl top were discontinued. The imitation wire wheel covers were replaced by aluminum alloy wheels. Revisions to the suspension and steering were made to improve both ride and handling. To improve stopping, four-wheel disc brakes replaced the rear drum brakes, with optional ABS. Traction control was available as an option. As with the 1988 to 1991 models, the Grand Marquis was available in base trim GS and deluxe trim LS models. LS models are distinguished by front cornering lamps. From 1992 onward, the Grand Marquis was produced solely as a four-door sedan, as the Colony Park station wagon was discontinued. Ford's keyless entry system became optional on lower trim packages, and standard on upper trim packages. Year-to-year changes powertrain. While the Panther platform was carried over from 1991, an all-new engine would be used for the 1992 Grand Marquis. The replacement for the OHV 5.0L and 5.8L Windsor V8S, the 4.6L SOHC modular V8 engine was the first overhead cam V8 to appear in an American market full-size sedan. Producing 190 horsepower, it was more powerful and more fuel efficient than both of its predecessors. An optional handling package, including a heavy-duty suspension, 3.27 rear axle, and a dual exhaust system that raised engine output to 210 horsepower was an option. It was largely the counterpart to the Ford Crown Victoria touring sedan. All models of the Grand Marquis were coupled to a 4-speed automatic transmission. For 1993, the hydraulically controlled AOD transmission was replaced by the electronically controlled AODE transmission. In 1995, the AODE was replaced the heavier-duty 4S70W transmission. It was shared with a Lincoln Mark 7 and Town Car. Production. While the redesigned 1992 Grand Marquis Crown Victoria would prove more fuel efficient than their predecessors, a loophole in CAFE regulations allowed Ford Motor Company to sell both full-size cars and improve the average economy of all of its cars. CAFE regulations require vehicles with fewer than 75% domestic parts content to be counted as part of an automaker's imported fleet rather than a domestic one. During the 1991 retooling for production of 1992 models at its St. Thomas, Ontario facility, Ford switched a number of its parts suppliers from Canada and the United States to suppliers outside North America, bringing the domestic parts content of the Grand Marquis and Crown Victoria below 75%. As such, the Grand Marquis was now part of a fleet consisting primarily of the far more fuel-efficient Ford Festiva rather than other V8-engined cars such as the Cougar and Ford Mustang. Third generation, the Grand Marquis was redesigned for 1998, with a new front and rear fascia, grille, hood, bumpers, wheels, lights, and mirrors. Although it bore a resemblance to the 1992-1997 model, the only body panels retained were the doors and the roof. It also got some small interior changes, and more optional features. Unlike the previous generation, Ford's Panther platform cars no longer received direct competition from General Motors. Until 2002, Mercury brought in close to or over 100,000 Grand Marquis sales. The Crown Victoria and Grand Marquis together sold over 200,000 a year, giving Ford a profitable market niche to itself. Mechanical details: a fail-safe cooling system with a dual-speed electric fan was put in place, along with a coil-on-plug ignition system. Larger dual-piston brake calipers were added to the front, requiring 16-inch wheels to be standard. A Watt linkage was added to the rear suspension. Fuel lines were moved to the passenger side frame rail. A coded ignition key system was introduced and a 72-amp-hour battery replaced the previous 58. Other minor changes included a redesigned engine cover and the power steering fluid reservoir being moved to the front of the engine. From 1998 to 2000, the 4.6L SOHC V8 single exhaust had 200 horsepower with a 2.73 rear axle ratio. The 4.6L SOHC V8 dual exhaust had 215 horsepower and came with a 3.27 or 355 rear axle ratio and handling suspension. For 2001 to 2002, the 4.6L SOHC V8 single exhaust had 220 horsepower with a 2.73 rear axle ratio. The 4.6L SOHC V8 dual exhaust had 235 horsepower and came with a 3.27 or 355 rear axle ratio and handling suspension. Introduced in the spring of 2001, the Grand Marquis LSE had rear air suspension, the higher rear axle ratio and the dual exhaust 4.6L engine. Fourth generation. After 5 years relatively unchanged, the Grand Marquis saw a major update for the 2003 model year. The Panther chassis would see its largest redesign since its 1979 introduction, while the body itself would see a number of evolutionary changes to modernize its exterior. The heavily rounded bumpers seen since 1992 gave way to a squared-off lower look. Up front, a larger grille wore the same vertical pattern seen on the rest of the Mercury sedan line. Larger headlight clusters were shared with the Marauder. In the rear trunk lid fascia is updated as well. While the Crown Victoria and Marauder have body color trim in between the tail lamps, the Grand Marquis is distinguished by red and chrome trim between its tail lamps. Inside, the interior was updated, with new door panels, door handles, and switchgear and an optional overhead console. On GS trim models, the B-pillars were now painted body color. Side airbags were also made available and a dual media player made standard. A shoulder belt was added for the rear middle passenger and a valet key was made standard. As part of the redesign, Mercury would change the trim lineup. In place of the traditional 2-model line, the Grand Marquis was expanded to 5. In addition to the base trim GS, there was now GS Convenience, LS Premium, LS Ultimate, and LSE. Introduced at the Chicago Auto Show in February 2001, and in showrooms by May, the LSE was designated as the LS Premium with a heavy-duty rear suspension, shorter rear axle ratio, and a 239 horsepower dual exhaust engine. It offered 5-passenger seating with leather, dual-power bucket seats, with a center console and floor shifter. Sadly, this model was discontinued by late December 2002. The LSE was revived briefly in 2005. From 2003 to 2005 a limited edition version of the LS model was sold. The limited edition included an appearance package that featured chromed mirrors, body-colored door handles, and a 2-tone leather interior. Limited edition models also came with side airbags standard. While technically a separate model, The return of the Mercury Marauder gave the division two versions of the Panther platform for the first time since 1991 and was the first time since 1974 since Mercury sold two full-size sedans. In 2005, the Mercury Montego was introduced as a second Mercury full-size sedan. Year-by-year changes chassis details While the exterior changes to the 2003 Grand Marquis were evolutionary, the changes to the Panther platform were far more extensive. To improve chassis rigidity, an all-new frame was introduced with fully boxed and hydroformed frame rails. In an effort to improve handling, the front and rear suspension were redesigned along with the brakes. A quiet EBD brake booster with a mechanical panic assist system was added. The new suspension changes required changing wheel designs to those with a high positive offset. Rack and pinion steering replaced the old recirculating ball system in an effort to increase steering precision and reduce costs. In standard versions of the Grand Marquis, the rear axle ratio was 2.73:1. In LSE versions with the handling suspension, a 3.271 rear axle ratio was used. The handling package was standard equipment on LS trim export models. Engine: for the 2003 model year, the Grand Marquis retained the version of the modular V8 introduced in 2001. Single exhaust versions produced 220 horsepower, while the dual exhaust version raised output to 235 horsepower. During the redesign, a number of changes were made to the engine. The oil pan was enlarged 20% to 6 quarts and an engine NOx sensor was made standard. Other changes included an intake manifold with aluminum water crossover and an electronic returnless fuel system. The new engine was distinguished by a redesigned engine cover, featuring a chrome V8 emblem. The oil filler cap was moved to the passenger side valve cover and the power steering fluid reservoir was moved off of the engine block onto the radiator shroud. For 2006, revisions to engine tuning added 4 horsepower to both versions of the modular V8, for a total of 224 and 239 horsepower, respectively. After the 2007 model year, the 239 horsepower version of the Grand Marquis was sold exclusively for GCC export. Transmission: all versions of the Grand Marquis were sold with a 4-speed automatic transmission. From 2003 to 2005, the 4S70W was used. In 2006, it was replaced by the 4S75E shared with the Ford truck lineup. Sales discontinuation: on June 2, 2010, Ford announced that it would end production of all Mercury vehicles by the end of 2010 as it discontinued the brand after 72 years. As a result of an unplanned delay in parts shipments, the final Grand Marquis was produced on January 4, 2011 at 7:46 a.m. The St. Thomas Assembly Plant in Ontario, Canada. Closing September 2011, bringing an end to the production of the Ford Crown Victoria and Lincoln Town Car. In continuous production for 36 years, the Grand Marquis was the longest produced Mercury. In total, nearly 2.7 million were produced, making it the best-selling vehicle sold by the brand. Among Ford Motor Company models in North America, only the Ford Econoline, Ford Mustang, Ford Thunderbird, Ford F-Series, and Lincoln Continental nameplates have been produced longer. The Panther platform served as the basis for Grand Marquis design for 32 years. Nearly unmatched by other automakers for longevity, the external appearance of the Grand Marquis remained largely unchanged for the last 19 years of its production life. Export markets: during its production, the Grand Marquis was sold throughout North America, although it was not always badged as a Mercury. Outside of North America, exports were concentrated on the Middle Eastern market, where its large size and V8 power were attributes still sought by buyers towards the end of production. Canada. In Canada, the Mercury brand was phased out in 2004. After the demise of its short-lived Mercury Marauder twin in 2004, the Grand Marquis was the last remaining Mercury vehicle sold in Canada. The Grand Marquis replaced the civilian version of the Crown Victoria, which was now sold exclusively to commercial fleets and law enforcement in Canada. Sales continued until the 2011 model year, when the Ford Taurus became the next full-size Ford. Mexico. The Grand Marquis was sold in Mexico from 1982 to 1984, and from 1992 to 2004 as a Ford. It replaced the Ford Limited Crown Victoria, and became a great success in sales and prestige as the most luxurious and expensive car available for sale. It was available as a 2- and 4-door sedan, as well as the Country Squire station wagon. Besides the different brands, it was unchanged from the US version. The Grand Marquis was discontinued after 1984 since the sales of vehicles with 8-cylinder engines became prohibited in Mexico, being replaced by the Ford Cougar. From its reintroduction in 1992, the Grand Marquis kept the Mercury badge on the front grille. It was replaced for the 2005 model year by the Mercury Montego, due to slowing sales attributed to the sedan size. Although the revived Montego was intended to invigorate full-size Mercury sales, it was dropped after the 2007 model year due to lack of sales. Middle East. The Grand Marquis and its Ford Crown Victoria counterpart were popular sedans in the Middle East, especially in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. Vehicles manufactured for this market were known as GCC spec vehicles, available in all Gulf Cooperation Council countries. For large car buyers, the Grand Marquis was popular due to its simplicity, reliability and affordability. However, as a result of its age, toward the end of its production life, the export version of the Grand Marquis began to lose market share towards rivals such as the Chevrolet Caprice and the Dodge Charger. Modification. All vehicles destined for Middle East export feature the high ambient temperature and speed package, true dual exhaust, a heavy-duty battery, and an auxiliary transmission fluid cooler. In addition, the language of warning labels are in Arabic instead of English. Since 1998, the GCC spec Grand Marquis has shared its 40/40 front seats with the Lincoln Town Car. Due to the warm climate, cloth seats are standard equipment. Vehicles manufactured prior to 2002 also featured a catalytic converter Elite option. As a handling upgrade, the GCC spec Grand Marquis was available with an export handling package option. Similar to its North American counterpart, it consisted of rear air suspension, stiffer springs, larger front stabilizer bar, and a heavy-duty rear stabilizer bar. Unlike its American counterpart, it shared the stock rear axle ratio. The export handling package was available on any standard wheelbase GCC spec Grand Marquis and standard on all LS trim versions. Models with the handling package featured a rear Mercury Marauder trunkled spoiler and 16 inches 9-spoke Crown Victoria LX wheels. The LS Premium and LS Ultimate models equipped with a handling package share the same 16 inches 9-spoke wheels as their LS counterparts. The 9-spoke Crown Victoria LX wheel replaced the 2003 Euro 2005 LSE wheels with darker inserts for 2006 and 2007. Trim variation. Middle Eastern versions of the Grand Marquis are equipped with slightly different options and features than their North American counterparts. Prior to 2009, 6 different trim levels were available: GS, GS Convenience, GSL, LS, LS Premium, LS Ultimate. In 2009, the LS models were only available with a column shifter and 40/40 Lincoln Town Car seats, available in luxury cloth or leather trim. The GSL is a long-wheelbase model offering 152 mm of extra leg room for rear passengers. It is equipped like an LS model, with standard features such as an 8-way power driver's seat, side airbags, leather-wrapped steering wheel, automatically dimming rear-view mirror, electronic climate control, power-adjustable pedals, premium sound system with CD and cassette, 17-inch wheels with 235/55W17 Goodyear Eagle RSA tires, heated door mirrors, fog lights and special GSL badging. The once optional gauge cluster is standard, with controls located on the center of the dashboard, between the head unit and climate controls. In North America, this model was only available to fleet customers as a commercial version of the Ford Crown Victoria. For 2009, the Grand Marquis was only available in 2 different trim levels, GSL and LS, both of which were near identical in terms of features and options. The LS was a fleet model, which was heavily decontented, losing once standard features such as an overhead console with compass and a power passenger seat. The export handling package was dropped, eliminating features such as the Mercury Marauder spoiler and rear air suspension. In Kuwait, the 2009 GSL retailed for 6,500 Kuwaiti dinars and a fully equipped LS for 7,500 Kuwaiti dinars. For 2010, the GS model reappeared in the lineup, and several features became available as standalone options. The export handling package was made standard along with a power passenger seat. In Kuwait, the LS model was not available to the general public in 2010, as they are heavily sold to fleet buyers, such as the Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Health and state-owned Kuwait Oil Company, where they are given to employees as fringe benefits. For 2011, the long-wheelbase GSL was replaced by the GS, and the LS model was made available again to the general public in Kuwait. The LS Ultimate Edition remains a fleet model and differs only slightly from the GS, equipped with features such as leather seats, electronic automatic temperature control and an automatically dimming rear-view mirror. Lumbar support was no longer available. Engine specifications. References. External links: Mercury Grand Marquis official website.